Hello, everyone, and welcome to my first full episode talk of the Last of Us series on HBO. So, this is episode 4. If you missed it, I did a recap of 1 through 3 because at the time I wasn't making these videos, and I kind of decided to start doing it now. So, there's a recap of all 3 episodes in one, but from here on, it's going to be, each episode is going to be talking about, each of these episodes is going to be talking about one single episode from The Last of Us. You get it. Also, side note, if you are a fan, which I assume you are if you're watching this, episode 5 will be premiering on Friday because they don't want to compete with Super Bowl Sunday. So make sure that you are tuning in Friday, and I will be making a video, so it'll be up earlier than normal because the episode's going to be airing normal. Now, again, this is going to be a full spoiler review. I won't be spoiling anything besides what's in this episode, so I won't be talking in depth about anything that's only in the games. So if you haven't played the source material, the Last of Us video game, then you are safe here. But I will be spoiling everything episode, so you might want to watch that before you watch this. And this is going to be kind of like a discussion for us. So the episode starts pretty faithful to the game, actually, with Ellie finding her little book of like dad jokes, as we'll call them. She's basically at a gas station looking at her little pistol, and she goes out to Joel, who is siphoning gas from her car, and just kind of starts harassing him. And she starts reading the terrible jokes and all of that to him, and he's just kind of like deep sighing, and she just keeps reading them to him, which is a really funny part of the game. She reads these jokes to Joel a lot, and a couple of these scenes were very like word for word of the game, which I found interesting. Like she finds this like naughty magazine. It's like a male magazine, and she's kind of talking like, "Oh, how does he even walk with that thing?" Which is like exact dialogue from the game, which is cool. And then she also says like, "Why are the pages stuck together?" And Joel's like, I don't know how to explain that." She's like, "I'm just messing with you." Then she hits him, and then she throws it out the window, which that's like an exact joke from the game. So I appreciated seeing it exactly in the show like that because I thought it was a really funny moment. Um, but then they did change things up, but they did keep it similar. So in the game, they do find someone that's asking for help, and Joel's like, no, and it ends up being raiders, and they kind of get attacked. So that does happen in the game. That does happen in the show, but it's in Kansas in the show, and it's in I believe it's in Pittsburgh is where it is in the game, which is funny because I'm like watching them driving through the countryside because you do get a lot of really cool shots, I will say, and I'm like, this looks kind of like PA because I go to PA a lot because I live close to it. I live in Ohio though, and I think something that really drives home things a little bit better in this show than any other apocalyptic shows is there's a lot of name brand stuff you see that's like decaying, like Love's gas station, which has like, it's like a combo with an Arby's, and just seeing that kind of stuff as you're traveling the highway really kind of hits home a little bit more because you're like, oh man, like it's just things that look familiar to you, things you recognize instead of just made up brands because they don't want brand recognition in the show. So I actually kind of like the fact that there is like actual name brands of places because it makes the world feel a little bit more relatable. At least for me, it did. But anyways, they get to the person that's asking for help, and of course, Joel's like, "Put your seatbelt on. This is not good." In the middle of this town in Kansas, and they just drive right through him, and they hit him. And then they start getting attacked by all these people. And so Ellie snuck a gun because Joel wouldn't let her have a gun until then. And they get in kind of this fight. Joel has her go hide. Well, while she's hiding, someone sneaks up on Joel, pins him down, and Ellie has to come and like shoot him. Well, she doesn't kill him. Joel basically says like turn around, and he kills the guy. But this is, as far as Joel's concerned, the first person that my cat's just having a time back there. This is the first person that Joel thinks that she's really hurt, and so they have this whole conversation. Just again showing that Joel kind of learning to care for her, and he apologizes, saying that it was my fault. I let my guard down. You shouldn't have had to do that. And she's like, "Look, it's not my first time." We also get a new character in this episode named Kathleen, which is played by I am drawing a blank on her name, but I really love her. She's been in Yellow Jackets and many other things. So she's a completely new character um, for this for just for the TV series. She is not in the games, and now she isn't in this episode too much. But she, it starts with her interrogating this doctor, and the doctor basically says, like, "Look, I'm not going to tell you where," because it sounds like what happened was he gave information um, to someone, and it ended up leading to her brother's death. Well, a guy named Henry, who is in the games, Henry and Sam, it's a father and son. Um, which we get to meet at the very end of the episode, but that apparently he gave him Henry's location. Henry gave the location of Kathleen's brother, and I guess he ended up being killed. And she has a gun to his head, and she's like, "Look, this is what made you talk before. What else do I need to make you do?" And he's like, "Won't give her information." And she's like, "Why won't you give me information?" He's like, "I'm your only doctor." Basically, like, "I know you're not going to kill me because I'm your doctor." And then she finds out that some people of hers have been like shot in the streets, and she assumes it has to do with Henry. That Henry's called some mercenaries in, or something like that. And of course, it's just Joel and Ellie. Well, she's like, "Look, these guys are almost dying. The people that Joel had shot. Is there anything we can do if I get a doctor?" And they're like, "That's too far beyond a doctor." And then she just goes back and she shoots the doctor. So she did kill him. I guess she decided they don't need a doctor. I mean, there might be other instances where you might need a doctor, but I guess this one instance where you don't need one, she's like, "I should just go kill the doctor." Make a point, I guess. So they're looking for Joel and Ellie, and they do end up finding where Henry and Sam were staying. There's like all these pictures of like superheroes and like empty food cans, and they kind of find that out. And then it's something that I didn't really understand this scene that well. But they go down and they're going to leave like the facility where they find that they were squatting, and they go down and to like this garage area, and there's like a big sinkhole forming, and it's like getting bigger. And they kind of step out, and her partner is asking her like, "Hey, should we like tell the others?" And she's like, we need to deal with this first." And he's like, "What?" So like I'm assuming that that's something real bad that's happening. I don't remember if that's something from the games, but there's big sinkhole. I don't know what's going on there, what that's going to be about. So I am very intrigued with what's going to end up kind of going on there. Um, and then we go back to, we're back to Joel and Ellie, and they basically find a place to stay for the night. They climb like 35 floors of like this like 45 floor building or something like that. And they lay out their sleeping bags, and they go to bed. And Joel like puts all this glass down, and Ellie's kind of making fun of him. She's like, "Why are you doing that?" And he's like, "So I can hear the people if they come in, I'll hear them." And she's like, "Oh, I get it, crunch, crunch, crunch." And he's like, "Well, yes." And she's like, "Are you sure you'll hear them?" And Joel's like, "Yeah, I'll hear them. That's why I did it." And then Ellie kind of says, "Well, the reason I asked you that was because I noticed you can't hear very well in your right ear." And she's like, "Is that from, when you got shot or being shot at?" And he's like, "No, it's from doing the shooting. So I recommend, um, you know, to use your knife if you want to keep your hearing." And that's something else I forgot to mention earlier in the episode. After Joel kind of apologizes to her for her having to use the gun, because he takes the gun from her, but he gives it to her, kind of shows her the right way to hold it. And it's like, "I'm entrusting you to do that." So again, kind of seeing that wall breaking between the two and kind of a relationship blossoming. And then the biggest kind of scene we get really showing them kind of growing together, kind of forming a bond. Because earlier in the episode, when they're driving, he says, like, he basically says that, Tommy, his brother, is somebody that like is hopeful for things, and Heath just thinks it's just all bull crap, and there's no reason to basically hope that there's going to be a cure or anything like that. It's all just bullshit. And Ellie's like, "Well, what's the point of going on if you don't have any hope?" And he's like, "Well, we do it for family." He's like, and she says, "Well, I'm not family." He's like, "No, you're cargo," which I'm like, "Ooh, that's mean." And he's like, "But Tess was like family to me, and I promised that I would deliver you the cargo." you know, Obviously Joel doesn't really feel that way, but you can definitely tell like his character is like just doesn't want to get too close to people, because obviously people die in this world a lot. But if he didn't care, obviously, he wouldn't be upset that she hurt someone. He wouldn't show any remorse or any, kind of emotion to her at all. But obviously he has been, just like in last episode where he didn't want her to see the bodies. Like, so you kind of see that kind of blossoming. But at the end of the episode, she tells him another one of her funny jokes. I think it is, I don't remember, something about diarrhea or whatever, and he actually laughs, and they have like this moment where they just kind of like chuckle together and just kind of fall asleep laughing. It's kind of a sweet moment, which is short-lived because Ellie wakes him up and she's being held at gunpoint by a man, and then Joel wakes up and a young boy is going shh and holding a gun at him. Very light spoilers, I'm not even gonna say, if you played the games, you know who these characters are, and they do have a very important role coming up. I'm very curious to see where it'll take these characters, if it'll go the same way that the games did, or if it will deviate. But they are pretty integral to the story of the game. So I'm very curious to see what we get from this moving forward. Overall, I thought this was a really solid episode. Again, a lot of like character growth. I really like the character of Kathleen. She isn't in it a lot, but it sounds like from like articles I've read that she is going to be in it quite a bit, because the article that I read said she's a character that you're going to start not liking and kind of learn to love. So I'm excited to see that. I don't know if she'll be her own subplot, if she'll ever meet up with Joel and Ellie, because right now she's literally, it seems like she's kind of like the leader of this enemy, that they just killed a lot of people. So I can't imagine that they team up, but maybe she'll be a side character in a side plot that we will get. Kind of like how we got a complete side plot with Bill and Frank in episode 3. So very curious. I love that they're keeping things very close to the game in certain times, and also deviating heavily in other times, to really make people like me, who are very familiar with the games, to kind of be like, I'm very intrigued. Like, yeah, I know some of the main things are going to happen with these main characters, Joel and Ellie, but there's all this other stuff that I'm just not sure what's going on. And I think it was super, super smart for them to do this, because again, it gets people, even if you know the game in and out and played it a million times, there's still things that are going to be different and a surprise for you. And that really is awesome. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought about this episode. Are you excited for the next one? I would give this one a 9. Is that what you would give it? Let me know what you would rate this episode. I would give it like a 9 or 9.5. Not quite as strong as some of the others. Just a little bit of a shorter episode too. This one really seemed to be setting up a little bit more. So I'm really excited for next week's episode, when we get more into those characters that we see at the end. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.